And before that, I did study. I was in college before I went to Morristown, and I studied psychology, got a degree in psychology. So I guess that kind of influenced me a bit in starting this club, which I'm going to talk about, that we started at the University of Pennsylvania, a couple, maybe in 2006, called Cogwell, which means cognitive wellness. But the title here is Good Vibes Only. And let me just get my few words up here. And so we're going to emphasize idea of in the way of the Rebbe. Most people probably have seen the book Positivity Bias, and we know that the Rebbe was very much into being positive. As a matter of fact, if you read the introduction in the book Positivity Bias, the Rebbe says that he worked on himself. I worked on myself to always look at things in a positive light. Otherwise, I could not have survived. And that were the words of the Rebbe back in the 30s and the 40s when he was going through getting out of Europe and all the things that we know that the Jewish people were going through, and many of the amazing and miraculous things that the Rebbe did in those times. But he's very clear that he made a conscious effort to be, that it was a choice, that he had to be positive. And I guess I want to bring that up because the title here is Good Vibes Only, and life lessons, so to speak, about living life through the lens of Hasidus. And I want to frame it, in a way that, my work obviously on Shlichus with students, and in this area of cognitive wellness has been influenced by the Rebbe and that vision that he had. So the question, Cogwell is actually an active listening club. So I'm going to throw out a few questions that we have at the beginning, and hopefully by the end, in half an hour or so, we'll have some answers. So one question is, don't we listen all the time? Why do you have to start an active listening club? Listening is something that a person has to do. It's a natural thing. You're interacting with people, you're listening. And what can we learn about listening that we're not already doing? Whatever profession, whoever you are, whether it's a friend, a parent, a Shliach, someone working in business, you got to be listening. You're not, that's happening to us. And why is it so important that you have a club? Why would students join a listening club? Sounds might sound weird. You're telling them we're getting, these are things that students do in their free time. So, and so those are the questions. Why is it important, Baklal? This whole concept of active listening, and why would students even, or anyone, want to be in a club that does that? And besides the fact that Rebbe being positive and emphasizing, I think what I wanted to bring out about that was that the Rebbe was saying it was a choice on his part to be positive. It wasn't just the Rebbe was born, he was an optimist. He worked and he had to choose. And the idea here is part of this talk, I guess, in Yiddishkeit in general, there's an idea that we're not always born set up to do certain things. You have to choose the way you look at things. You have to make choices. We have to put an effort in. And that, I think in the Positivity Bias book, that's one of the emphasis there, that this isn't a natural thing, but there's got to be effort. In one time, Simon Jacobson came and spoke to the Shluchim on campus about, through his writing and involved in putting out all the things that the Rebbe was saying. he came up with 10 tools that he believed the Rebbe, they were the positive communication tools that the Rebbe used. 10 of them. And he told us what they were. And he said, we wanted to write this as a book or something. He wanted to put it together. He hadn't done it yet. But one of the things he emphasized, which I think we all know, is that the Rebbe was very empathetic and sensitive towards others. Which, listen, mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael, right? What does it mean, Ahavas Yisrael? To be empathetic and be sensitive towards others. That's really, a major part. But it's not surprising that was one of the tools that the Rebbe used to be able to be impactful and influencing so many people. And you can, so I think that the reason I'm mentioning that is that relates, and obviously I think many of the things the Rebbe did, he did because he was making an example for us to emulate and to think about. And so before I talk about, everybody got a piece of paper? Good, because we're going to do an exercise here in a minute. So it's not just me, blah, 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 And I we'll try to make it a little more interactive. But Hasidus actually, there's a lot of stories, I think, that personified this idea of the importance of being empathetic and being sensitive. One of them is in the Yom Yom, we see that the quote from Mishlei, the idea, Daigas Alev, right? When somebody is worried, it says that they should remove it. The pasuk tells us that they should remove it. The question is how? How do you get rid of worries? So there in the Talmud, it brings two opinions. One says that you should kind of get it out of your mind. And the other, it says, related to acherim, say it to others. And there, that's what's quoted in the Yom Yom, that opinion about acherim. And the Tzemach Tzedek emphasizes the idea, though, that it's acherim only in terms of guf, but that what this, to be effective and to help someone get rid of their worries, the Tzemach Tzedek and the Yom Yom emphasizes you have to be united with them in spirit and sensitive to their concerns, which is maybe not such a hit. I don't know. If you're going to help somebody, you should be united with them and sensitive with their concerns, right? So, I mean, that's what he's emphasized. Beyond what the Talmud says, to relate it to others. But the question is, isn't that easy? Or is it obvious how to unite with someone and be sensitive to them? Is it a simple thing or not? Is it just a matter of, you kind of say what you think you could be, or maybe sometimes people are a little bit wondering, how can I really help this person who has daigas alev? And is that really for me? Maybe it's not my thing, but here it seems to emphasize that at least it's giving us a hint to tell us that you need to be unite with them, obviously in a way, and obviously, and to be sensitive to their concerns. What else do we see in Chassidus? So there's a story, right, of I think it was the Frierdiker Rebbe asked his father, why is it that a person has two eyes? We have one nose, we have one mouth, could be one eye. So the Rebbe Rashab told him that the eye on the right is for you to look at other people. And the eye on the left, you look at yourself. At least that's how it's quoted where I saw it. I know there's other versions. We know the right is the idea of compassion or chesed, right? And that the left is more strict, right? Gevura. So here, Horad is telling us when you relate to somebody, you should be compassionate, or maybe the idea of giving them the benefit of the doubt. That in the Rebbeim were reminding the Hasidim we should give ourselves the benefit of the doubt when it comes to looking at others. When we look at ourselves, okay, that's another story. But here, so we see this idea, emphasis again on how to relate to others and with the right. But there's an interesting story, you may have seen it, that Rabbi Kalmanson brings in Seeds of Wisdom, where there was a teacher who was dabbling in Jewish mysticism. And the Rebbe asked him, what do you do? Because he was very caught up in learning. What about the Ahavas Yisrael? The Rebbe asked him. So he says, I'm thinking about it, what I can do. I'm thinking what I can do for Ahavas Yisrael. So the Rebbe asked him a question. It's an interesting, here's the story. Actually, I have it here. So it says, Kabbalah and Jewish law views the right side as the more dominant side. For example, the right hand should be used to perform a mitzvah. This is because the right side represents chesed and loving kindness, whereas the right side's that. The left side is gevura, withholding. So then the Rebbe asked him a question. Why would it be that Hashem put our heart on our left side? The heart of emotion where it should feel for others. You might think it should be on the right. Why is the heart on the left? You see, continued the Rebbe, he told him, your heart is actually on the right side. The job of your heart is to empathize with and care for others. So when you stand facing someone from their perspective, your heart is on the right side. From the perspective of the other that you're facing, it is on the right. Which I think what the Rebbe meant, what he was saying is that when you're facing someone and you're wanting to empathize with them, it means you're taking their perspective. You are seeing their vision. And when you accomplish that, when we can take another person's perspective for ourselves, then that is when, that's when our heart is on the right. That's what it's meant. So it's interesting because you have the right eye in the one story, but now we got the heart on the left. But you see, it's not so simple to how these things work, right? Is it the right or the left? And when is it the right and the left? And it can start getting a little complicated, which I think another basic idea here is, Pirkei Avot says you shouldn't judge another person until you're in their place, which you all know and we've heard. So I'm throwing these things out to say that listening and active listening is not so simple. And so that's why we started the club. And that's what we're trying to do in these days. Okay, everybody, I would like you to get a piece of paper. Even in the back here, we have a few sheets here. Take a piece of paper. Here, we're gonna, instead of a boring talk, we're going to, they're on the page. We're gonna make this an active, interactive thing here. Who needs? Everybody has a piece of paper? No pen, you don't need a pen. Only the paper. Okay. Everybody have paper? So, what I'd like you to do, we're going to close our eyes. No questions. Okay? No questions. Close your eyes and follow my instructions. Hold the paper in your hand. Okay, close your eyes. No questions. Fold your paper in half. Nice fold. Fold it in half. Good. Fold it in half again. Get it folded nicely. Tear off the right top corner. Right top corner. Tear, no question. Right top corner. Fold it again. All right, and here maybe tear off the bottom left corner. Getting hard, right? Bottom left corner, just tear it off. And fold it again. You might have to do this with your teeth, right? Okay, and like tear off a little bit, whatever you can of the top right corner. You can tear it off, try to get it off. Use your teeth, it's all right. All right, I'd like everybody to open up their paper to everyone else. Show me, and let's look at what we got here. Here's a beautiful. This one. Wonderful designs. We got a few threes, we got a 5, we got a big hole, we got a 4. No, no, only on the outside. All right. So the question is, everyone heard exactly the same thing. We all hear, listening, we heard all the same. So why would it be? How could it be that we would get so many diverse pictures or the way it comes out if we all heard it? You would think, right? If you heard the same thing, we would do it all the same. Why is it so different? And this is not a rhetorical question. I want to hear from you guys. Why do you think it was different?
Everybody's right and left and top is different.
What do you mean?
Where they started, wherever they were going. It's the spirit. So you get it like this, the next person can get started like this.
So the way that you would respond, the instructions are different. Even though you all heard the same thing, right? The starting point from how you folded it, you mean? Okay, anything else? Why, and what made it more likely, and what else do you think was here that might have changed, or how could it have been that we got it all more alike? No. We're giving the benefit of the doubt. What?
If the instructions, the more detailed you speak, it will be closer to each other. You say all the loose part, the corner, the top corner.
So where there were, right, it's a good point. So there were some details missing that I wasn't necessarily filling in, right? And so if you don't know the details, you're assuming what they are, because it's kind of like a gray area, and I'm not telling you, right? I didn't tell you anything. So it's not all clear. We start from the different places. What are things that I said kind of in the instruction here that made it also hard to be all the same? What? Why? You have no visual clues, right? So you couldn't even cheat and look at your other guy next to you, or somehow, because we use the way we see things around us is a big part of how we take in information. You had no visual. gray areas, whatever. There was another thing that you couldn't do. Why would that make a difference? Couldn't ask. You can't ask. Exactly. So asking also is very important in listening. Especially Jewish people, we're pretty good at questions. But if you take that away, right? So the exercise here is to show, I think, would make a difference. So sometimes we're predisposed to do things. He's saying a righty or a lefty, because the way we're made up, it's going to also affect the way that we listen and respond. So the point here is that, listening sounds easy and it seems not so complicated, but the reality is if just cutting a piece of paper into with a few simple instructions is so complicated, can you imagine figuring out something a little bit more complex, like a human being, and trying to understand, or in our communication with each other, maybe you say it the other way, maybe there are a few things that we're missing when we communicate because it's not clear. So active listening is actually a practice, or it's a particular kind of listening. It means where you set yourself up in a situation where you can be face to face with someone and not be distracted, and have a space in which for you to give your complete attention to someone and try to understand what they might be trying to communicate to you. So it's not something you could do on the run. And the things we're saying here about listening, it's not that, he's a bad listener because he's running around and doing a lot of things. But a lot of times we're not good listeners because we didn't have the opportunity, or we didn't make the space in which to listen better. If somebody comes up to you and brings up something, and you're, on your way to work, and it's something let's say it's in your family or a good friend or whatever it may be, and you really want to deal with that, but you're on your way to work. What are you going to do? What could you do? I throw that out as a question. Let's say a family member brought something up. It's important. You're on the way to work. What could you do? And you're on the fly. You're not going to be able to take much time. Any thoughts?
Communicate. You say it's not a good time right now.
You say, not so complicated. I can't focus, meaning I care about what you're saying, but it's not a good time right now. Could we set a time, maybe later today when I get home, and we'll sit down and talk about it? That is a big part of just getting into the situation where you could apply active listening skills. You couldn't even actively listen if you're on the run. It's impossible. So that knowledge, and what I wanted to say, the club, or what we do in the, is to kind of bring out these points, which are maybe not that, these are life skills. They're not that complicated. It's just that sometimes you didn't, what's that? The application, and to just raise awareness. My point here in the club, we do with the students, or the point in having this, first to understand there's a basis in Hasidus about how to improve these skills, but beyond that, to know how to do it and what they are. So we have a acronym that's called I Leap. ILEAP. I Leap. I Jump, which is whatever. That's the acronym that came out, and that's what they use in the club to explain active listening skills that they try to develop. One of them, even before the I, is setting a time to speak to someone. You have to, like we said before, and obviously put your phone away. The phone has to be in a situation where it's, some say that just having a phone out when you're talking to someone and you want to have a serious conversation, it affects the conversation. But even if it's turned over, whatever, it's obviously silence. And you really don't want those kind of distractions. And you try to set that up at least for 10, 15 minutes, a half an hour, where you could sit and be face to face with the person. Maybe if you know it's an emergency, you could say, while we're talking, I might get this call for 2 minutes. But you have to kind of frame it and have it all ready so that the person that you're there listening, speaking with, feels that they're being cared for, and it's not just that you're trying to multitask. You can't multitask in active listening. Can't do it. The letter I means, I don't know if you heard this before, but there's an idea of using an I statement because, and this maybe is more of a case when you want to sit down with somebody that you're worried about and you want to make a space for them, but you don't want to put them on the defensive. So rather than saying, you haven't come out of your room for a few weeks and I think you're in deep trouble, or, you're really a slob and I can't live in the room with you anymore because, you're living like, what? That, when you say that, you put them on the defensive. If you say I, and you phrase it in a way of concern, it changes the conversation and makes it less confrontational. So you could say, for example, I'm worried about you because you haven't been out of your room for this long and I don't know what it means. Could we sit down and talk about it? The minute it's saying something that I am concerned, which is valid, and you're just making a space for them to see if they're, or you can do that in any situation. I feel very bothered when we have mice and ants walking all over the room, and I think we need to talk about your tidiness situation, however you want to put it. But obviously, you do have a concern, right? You're living with the person. I feel this and that. First of all, you're letting them know how you feel, and you want to talk about it. Didn't call him a slob. It's valid. So that's one thing, is the I statement. You may have heard that before, but it's very important. The rest are just more or less skills. The L for I leap is listen, meaning you have to sit there and actually give space for the person to talk, and either you may have mentioned something they're going to talk about, or maybe they said, like you said, they're on the run. I didn't have time because I'm going to work. So now you set the space, you have a half an hour, and you say, okay, I can sit down and listen now. Tell me what you wanted to talk about, or tell me about that situation. If you have set this space, and now you can actually listen. And listening is not only saying those words, but it's looking at the person, it's your body language, because your visual is very important in listening. If they see that you're looking at your phone every 20 seconds, they may not feel that you're really there for them, right? I don't think the Rabbi was looking at his, all the other people, and thinking about this, that, and other thing when he spoke to somebody. They were there 100% with the Rabbi, and that is what needs to be done in these cases where you want to be sensitive to someone and show your care for them. E means I leap, listen, empathize, meaning, just to as you hear somebody's story or as you're listening to them, you can make it. Empathize means that you show that you're feeling for what they're going through. It's not necessarily good to say, I understand. I understand where you're at. That's not actually a good thing to say, because we're trying to understand where they're at. We don't really get it. We're listening, and your empathize might be like, saying something like, sounds like you're going through a lot. Or, wow, that's hard. Whatever it may be, it's hard for them, whatever it is. And so that listening, empathize, be there for them. And then A is ask, because you need to clarify and understand, if somebody's explaining things to you, what they're going through. And you may not, it's likely you don't get it. You're not in their shoes, you're not in their place. But someone who wants to kind of have someone to talk to about something, they want to get it out. And actually, in these cases, it's better, so to ask to clarify, is this what happened? Is that, how did it make you feel? Just so it's kind of almost like you're getting into their place, which is the way of empathizing. And it's also to be able to really what often, it's not the only thing, but oftentimes that's what people want. They want someone, when they're worried about something, and why are they sharing it with a friend or a family member or a business partner? Why are they sharing it? Because they want the other person to carry it with them. Like the Tzemach Tzedek said, you're united with them and you're concerned with what they're going through. You don't understand it, you're not concerned. You can't even be sensitive to them. You can sit there, but it doesn't mean just sitting there. You can be active. You can, as we said, you can empathize, right? You can ask, you can listen, but it's not just sitting there like a blob. And these are things that are really do help the person. Now, sometimes, and the last thing, the P is paraphrase. Paraphrase means you're trying to make sure that what you think you understand is really what it is. I think this is what you're saying. Is that right? I think what you're saying is you're really pissed off at this person because this and this that they did. And then they'll say yes, or maybe they'll say no. And you didn't get it, but that's okay. Because if you're asking them and you're wrong, so then they'll tell you better what it is. And we already showed here how difficult it is to listen and really get it right, even with a piece of paper. So forget the paper here. So anyways, these are the basic skills we teach in the club. And that a person can, and obviously this is a practice. The reality is that the, so just to, what time is it? I should finish, right? I'll leave time just if anybody has any questions. I just like to say there are a few pitfalls. No, it's not always that somebody is looking to vent. Maybe somebody's looking for solution. And we guys, men generally like solutions, right? Somebody comes up to the problem, we're going to tell you what to do. And that's it. I don't have to listen to you. Tell me what's wrong. I'll tell you how to fix it. We generally like to fix things. And it's not necessarily wrong, but the question is the person who's speaking to you looking for advice on how to fix it, or they just want to be heard and share it with someone? How do you know the difference? This guy's good. Your wife is lucky. You ask, that's it. Are you looking for advice or not? If they say yes, okay, got the green light. If they say no, you also say, okay, I'll just listen and carry it with you. Some people say, I've heard this said, that when somebody sits down with them, the first thing they ask is like something like vent or like a problem solve. That's what, before it even starts, vent or problem, tell me. You know, in other words, from the beginning, they want to know if it's vent, okay, I'll actively listen and listen. Or are you looking for advice, vent or advice? You could ask that. Questions and these things, actually, the simple questions that we're not talking rocket science here. We're talking for lay people. We're not talking, you have to be a psychologist, you have to be a therapist. No, these are life skills to show Abbas Yisrael to those around us. Our family, our friends, our whatever situations we're in, whatever it is, students, as a teacher, these skills will last forever, and they really are the things, where that aspect of the Rebbe's tools of being empathetic and being sensitive. He knew these things, and Chassidus is telling us in those stories, but we have to be aware of it, like raise the conscience and to practice it. And so just to conclude, so, we were asking, what's the big deal about listening? So I hope everyone can be more aware that it's not so simple. Two, that it is important to know the simple skills. I could share with thank the community for having me, but with my son-in-law, Mendy Uman, that I can share with him and then pass it on to those who we have some like sheets and things that just remind people of these skills. And that, yes, students today are very into this, because whether you know it or not, people between the ages of 15 and 30 these days don't cope as well with the same challenges that the previous generation coped with. And I personally don't believe it's just because people are being, coddled or blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's a generation that grew up on a cotton ball and that screwed them up. No, whatever, it doesn't even matter. We have to recognize that this younger generation has more challenges, has more stress and anxiety. And the college students today recognize that with these skills, they could be a better friend for their close friends, and that it makes a difference just to help a friend get through the challenges of whatever it may be at that age. And it's the same thing for everyone in our own communities. We see it's true. And so that's why I think that Chassidus helps us to recognize, I think, where this comes from, because I personally believe that it's the Nefesh Elokis that we're strengthening, utilizing these skills. It's not coming from the Nefesh Bahamas. That's true. And that when we focus on this, work at it, it will help to increase our relationships, i.e. our Abbas Yisrael, and that it will be strengthen ourselves and those we care about around us, and so on. So that's it. Thanks for coming, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, and so on. L'chaim.
Very good. Thank you very much.